Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and welcome to the Multi-Stakeholder Roundtable of the Third Summit for Democracy. Please allow me to introduce myself. My name is Seo Mi-sorang, and it's an absolute honor and delight to be serving as your MC. 안녕하십니까? Seo Mi-sorang.
Good afternoon, I'm Seo Mi-sorang. Pleased to meet you.
Thank you very much. The Multi-Stakeholder Roundtable of the Third Summit for Democracy is a session that invites various stakeholders representing the government, academia, civil society, and private industries to come together and explore the topic of AI, digital technologies, and democracy. And as the title of the topic suggests, we will discuss and explore ways to better promote the values of democracy in the era of AI and digital technologies with their unique challenges and opportunities. Now, this afternoon's roundtable will include keynote speeches and 3 individual sessions in the following order: strengthening public-private partnerships to combat digital threats to democratic processes, artificial intelligence and emerging technologies, right-respecting innovation in democratic societies, and finally, digital technologies and internet governance, the role of democratic societies in upholding online freedom. But first, we will begin with the keynote speeches on AI, digital technologies, and democracy. The first keynote speaker is His Excellency Antony Blinken, the U.S. Secretary of State. Everyone, please join me in welcoming His Excellency Antony Blinken.
Thank you very, very much, and good afternoon, everyone. I want to start again by thanking our South Korean friends, all of our co-hosts, everyone here at the summit for coming together today and the days to follow. Our democracies have different histories, different strengths, different challenges, but we're all determined to deliver a safer, healthier, more prosperous, more inclusive future for our people and for people around the world. Now, we know there is no shortage of obstacles to meeting that objective. Lingering barriers to political participation, corruption, economic growth that isn't broadly shared. What I'd like to do this afternoon is spend a few minutes focusing on one long-standing problem that's become increasingly complicated and increasingly consequential, and that's the challenge of disinformation, of material deliberately meant to deceive and divide, as well as other forms of false and misleading content. We all know that a world in which reliable information is readily accessible is pretty much foundational to every issue in every country. It empowers us to understand and engage with the world around us, to make decisions that shape our lives, that shape our communities, that shape our countries. But we also know the information space has become more crowded, more complex, more confusing, more contested than ever. That, in turn, creates an enabling environment for disinformation, an environment in which state and non-state actors are undermining the objective truths on which open societies depend. And I think we all know this, we've all experienced this in our daily lives. As someone who's a little bit older than probably most of the people in this audience, this has maybe been the most profound change that I've experienced during my own career and working life. If you go back the 30 or so years that I've been in government, the most profound change has been in the information space. When I started out a little over 30 years ago, pretty much everyone did the same thing. They opened the door of their apartment or their home in the morning and picked up a hard copy of a newspaper. And there were only a few newspapers that everyone tended to rely on. And then if you had a television in your office, which some people did, but not everyone did, In the United States, you turn it on at 6:30 at night or 7 at night, and you'd get one of our 3 broadcast networks, ABC, CBS, NBC, for the evening news. And those were the foundational sources of information that pretty much everyone relied on. Now, to state the obvious, we live in a world where we seem to be intravenously connected to information, and we're getting new inputs every millisecond. The use of technology, particularly when it comes to digital technologies, social media, and now artificial intelligence, they're dramatically accelerating what had already been an incredibly fast pace of change. But that accelerant has also created an accelerant for disinformation, fueling polarization, adding to the general sense of confusion that people have about the world around them. During COVID, disinformation discouraged millions from getting vaccinated, with sometimes fatal results. Hashtags like climate scam have inundated online platforms, helping to delay action on the climate crisis. Nearly half the people of the world are going to be going to the polls this year. This is an extraordinary election year in country after country. But citizens and candidates will face a flood of falsehoods that suffocate serious civic debate. Our competitors, our adversaries, are using disinformation to exploit fissures within our democracies by further sowing suspicion, cynicism, instability, pitting one group against another, discrediting our institutions. People within our own societies have exacerbated these dynamics, sometimes deliberately, sometimes influenced by bots and algorithms that are trained on biased information. This distortion of the marketplace of ideas is not an unfortunate byproduct of free speech, it's a direct threat to freedom of expression itself. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights enshrines not only the right to express ourselves, it protects our freedom, and I quote, to hold opinions without interference. The manipulation of information undermines our ability to exercise that fundamental right. Building a more resilient information environment is for us a vital national security interest. It's also an urgent priority for our diplomacy. And I want to discuss some of the ways we're trying to advance that objective. To begin with, we continue to expose, to disrupt, and to deter disinformation. The State Department's Global Engagement Center coordinates our government-wide and multilateral efforts to identify, to analyze, to reveal foreign manipulation of information. Last September, we released a report detailing how the Chinese government has invested billions of dollars to spread propaganda and twist the global information environment. For example, buying cable TV platforms in Africa and excluding international news channels from subscription packages, or using local subsidiaries to surreptitiously purchase media companies in Southeast Asia, which then run heavily pro-PRC news. We unmasked the Kremlin's covert campaign to undermine support for Ukraine across the Western Hemisphere, laundering Russian content through Latin American media to make it look like it was organic. By discovering and publicizing these influence operations, we've enabled other governments, media, civil society, to track and to thwart them. For example, after the United States disclosed Moscow's hidden involvement in a Brazilian nationalist organization, a Brazilian political party expelled 50 members tied to the Russian-linked group. Now, countering misleading information is essential, but it's not sufficient. Just as we tackle falsehoods and distortions in the immediate term, we have to invest in making ourselves more resilient to them in the long term. Think about it this way. During COVID, we tirelessly delivered shots in arms while working to prevent and prepare for future epidemics. We combat hackers while establishing at the same time layers of cybersecurity to respond to malicious activity, to do so faster, and to ensure that attacks don't bring down entire networks. So, similarly, even as we're determined to expose and counter disinformation, the United States is equally focused on promoting an open, resilient information environment globally, where deceptive messages gain less traction, where truth is elevated. We need governments to uphold media freedom and the safety of journalists on and offline, because an independent and empowered press is a cornerstone for healthy democracies. We need to enhance open government and expand access to information. How a legislator voted, who received a government contract, how economic data like GDP numbers are compiled, so that journalists and citizens alike can hold their leaders accountable. We need to ensure that media regulators are independent and serve the public interest, rather than pressuring outlets to advance propaganda. We need governments to allocate their advertising dollars equitably, transparently, not use those resources to promote or punish a given outlet. We need greater transparency into who owns media companies, who owns the distribution networks, so that political or foreign entities can't purchase a news organization and restrict or advance certain views without the public knowing who's behind it. We need to invest in civic and media literacy and empower citizens to distinguish fact from fiction, especially as new technologies emerge like generative AI that can fool even the most sophisticated news consumers. By taking steps like these, those peddling disinformation will find it harder to operate in the shadows. Our citizens will have greater access to quality information. They'll be better equipped to assess the validity of the content that they encounter. Let me give you a few illustrations of how we're working to advance this comprehensive, affirmative approach. One example. Journalists bring vital information to light, whether that's reporting from a war zone or investigating corruption. The press has even uncovered itself disinformation campaigns. So, as part of promoting a resilient information environment, we're supporting reporters as they face repression and economic pressures. We're helping newsrooms implement stronger safety protocols when reporters are threatened. We're funding legal defense funds for journalists hit with expensive and baseless lawsuits that are meant to shut them up or shut them down. The United States is cracking down on the misuse of commercial spyware to surveil and harass journalists or human rights defenders and others, including leveraging sanctions, export controls, visa restrictions to hold governments and firms accountable. At last year's Summit for Democracy, we brought together 10 other countries committed to ensuring that this technology, commercial spyware, is deployed consistent with universal human rights and basic freedoms. This year's summit, we're announcing that half a dozen more nations are joining this coalition: South Korea, Japan, Germany, Finland, Poland, and Ireland. At the same time, we're working to strengthen the long-term financial sustainability of media outlets, especially local news that makes communities more knowledgeable and less susceptible to falsehoods. In Moldova, for example, USAID partnered with outlets to improve marketing and subscriptions, increasing revenues by 138% and online reach by 160%. The United States is also committed to public interest media, those outlets that are fact-based, editorial independent, and dedicated to informing citizens about issues that are critical to their well-being, whether that's corporate pollution or government corruption. Through the U.S. Agency for Global Media, that's the organization that began during World War II as the Voice of America, we're one of 8 major international public broadcasters that educate and engage hundreds of millions of people weekly in over 75 languages. We supported public radio in Ukraine, enabling 17 million Ukrainians to receive trustworthy news during Russia's war of aggression. At the very first Summit for Democracy, the United States dedicated $20 million to bolster public interest media in developing countries. We're glad other donors have now contributed $30 million more to revitalize what is an essential public service. The second way we're promoting a healthy information environment is by investing in greater digital and media literacy. Journalism helps get quality information out into the world, but we also have to do our best to make sure that readers, viewers, consumers, listeners, the ones receiving the content, can sort the wheat from the chaff. When you look at who's actually made themselves more resilient, more resistant to distortions and lies globally, this ability to discern what's credible and what's not is one of the biggest common denominators. In Finland, students learn about disinformation in primary school. Taiwan teaches seniors in rural areas how to spot misleading messages. Similarly, the United States 3-day tech camps have helped young leaders from Togo to Chile develop the skills to judge whether content is reliable. Through our digital communications network, 10,000 journalists and creative professionals from East Asia to Latin America are producing and sharing tools to promote accurate information. We offer English classes around the world, in part so that people can access independent news outlets, not just state-sponsored news in their native language. Today, the State Department is releasing what we're calling a democratic roadmap, recommendations to help people become more aware of and resistant to information manipulation, like encouraging social media platforms to label AI-generated content so that users know when an image is real or when it's not. Of course, we know that disinformation transcends borders. It crosses platforms. No single country, no single entity can meet this challenge alone, which is why a third way that we're creating a healthier information environment is through our diplomacy, advancing a shared understanding of the problem as well as creative solutions to address it. We're working to promote common principles. We're aligning partners and allies around a framework to counter information manipulation by foreign adversaries. Countries that adopt this blueprint commit to a range of actions, from developing national strategies and policies for fighting disinformation to enhancing their technical capabilities to detect and combat deceptive content. To put that cooperation into practice, we've signed agreements with countries from Bulgaria to South Korea, training partners to analyze disinformation, building capacity and resilience to this challenge. As I mentioned earlier today, this week the United Nations will adopt a landmark US-led resolution on advancing safe, secure, and trustworthy artificial intelligence for sustainable development, including measures to counter AI-enabled disinformation. Tomorrow, this summit's Information Integrity Cohort will consider how to strengthen our responses to misleading content in the context of generative AI. We're also sharing best practices. One of the things I've learned in 30 years of doing this is that for pretty much any problem that we face, somewhere, someone has probably figured out an answer, or at least the beginnings of an answer. But if we're not sharing that information, then all of us have to continue to reinvent the wheel. Sharing best practices is an incredibly powerful way to actually make progress. Alongside France, we're co-chairing the OECD's new Misinformation and Disinformation Hub, helping governments shift from ad hoc tactics to more holistic policies that enable reliable information to thrive. We're mobilizing collective action through groups like the Media Freedom Coalition, rallying more than 50 countries on 6 continents to speak out and engage governments when journalists are under assault. One set of stakeholders in particular has an outsized role to play in building a healthier information ecosystem. Simply put, the United States believes that the private sector can and must do more to address disinformation. Last year, we joined over 30 countries to endorse the Global Declaration on Information Integrity Online. In that declaration, we invited the tech industry to take steps like improving the transparency of their algorithms, establishing political advertising policies, developing indicators for gauging the trustworthiness of information sources. Now, online platforms can't solve the disinformation challenge alone, but the rest of us cannot solve it without them. Finally, the United States is working to tell our own story in authentic, proactive, and strategic ways, recognizing that correcting skewed narratives about our country, about our democracy, about our partners, requires our government to build trust and credibility around the world. We engage influential voices in modern-day platforms where people get their news, like podcasts. We hold regular press conferences where we subject ourselves to the toughest questions. We also hold people-to-people exchanges that enable people around the world to learn who we are and what we value. And when the State Department provides free wire services to media from the Indo-Pacific or Sub-Saharan Africa, these aren't US government news services. They are independent, reputable outlets like the Associated Press, like Reuters, that write tough articles, including about our own government. our willingness to acknowledge and to address our own shortcomings, not sweep them under the rug, not pretend they don't exist. That's what makes democracies different, and that's ultimately what makes democracies stronger. Another hallmark of our democracies is that our citizens shape our trajectories. And the choice ahead for us is clear. We can become so overwhelmed by lies and distortions, so divided from one another, that we will fail to meet the challenges that our nations face. Or we can meet this moment and do what democracies do best. We can welcome diverse voices and perspectives. We can think critically and debate vigorously. We can actually grow and self-correct. We can remember that accurate information, fundamentally, is a public good. It's available to all of us. It benefits all of us. And it will take all of us, everyone at this summit, each of our citizens, to build a more open, a more resilient environment for information, and continue to deliver a better future for our people and people around the world. Thank you so much for your attention this afternoon, but especially thank you for the work you'll be doing in the days and weeks ahead. Thanks very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank His Excellency for that insightful speech. Thank you very much. Next, we will hear the keynote speech by Mr. Amandeep Gill, the UN Secretary General's envoy on technology. Please welcome Mr. Gill to the stage.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I wish to begin by thanking the hosts, the Government of the Republic of Korea, for hosting this summit and for inviting me to be part of it. I thank as well the co-hosts and all those who've brought us together. This is an important moment, and not only because we have more than half the world going to the polls this year. It's an important moment because leaders from around the world will come together at the Summit of the Future in September in New York to renew multilateralism and to adopt, among other outcomes, a global digital compact. That compact will outline a shared vision for an open, free, secure, and inclusive digital future. On the agenda is artificial intelligence and other emerging technologies. On the agenda is digital trust and safety, of which misinformation, disinformation, the integrity of the public information space are there alongside other important issues. Now, on artificial intelligence, last year, continuing into this year, we've seen a number of very important initiatives. The recent finalization of the Council on Europe's Framework Treaty on AI, the US Executive Order, the EU AI Act, the Chinese interim measures, a host of other initiatives that testify to the importance of addressing this powerful set of technologies from a whole of government perspective. The Secretary General launched a high-level advisory body on AI to help the international community address this problem, again from a holistic perspective. That advisory body, which counts among its members Dr. Hak-Soo Ko, whom you will listen to shortly, among its members, has come out with an interim report that outlines a set of principles that should govern artificial intelligence. It outlines a certain number of functions that should be performed at the international level, in addition to what is being done in various jurisdictions at the national or regional level. and in addition to what the industry itself is doing by way of self-regulation, codes of conduct, and other ways of ensuring that these technologies are deployed and developed responsibly. The interim report contains these functions that have to be performed at the international level. A basic function is that of horizon scanning, assessment of the direction and implication of technology, both its positive implications, the opportunities that AI has for expanding the economy, generating jobs, and addressing the sustainable development goals, as well as the risks, including the risks to democracy, to the rule of law, and to the promotion and protection of human rights. In addition to this essential horizon scanning function, which will make available to all governments, all actors, including the private sector around the world, a set of scientifically assessed implications, there is the important function of interoperability. You have a host of initiatives today, and often it would be hard to put them together, and there could be gaps in terms of how they come together. So there is an essential function on interoperability that needs to be performed at the international level. On the question of what are the threats, what are the challenges that we are trying to address today at this summit, we've all focused on malicious actors, those who would seek to undermine democracy, the rule of law, and human rights by misusing these technologies, whether it's through deep fakes or through other ways of manipulating information and public opinion. I would like to add to that set of threats some concerns related to how these technologies are deployed. And these may not be that obvious in the short run, but these are like rust in the wheels. They could undermine our democracy over the long run by reducing public trust in institutions and by creating certain societal reactions which our existing institutions would find it hard to address. Among these concerns are the accumulation of tech and economic power, the concentration of wealth in certain classes of societies, in certain regions, and also the impact on jobs, the depression of wages in certain sectors, the displacement of jobs. The pace at which these technologies are coming is very different from what we've seen with previous technological revolutions. So it's incumbent on public officials to build resilience in our existing analog institutions to help anticipate the impact of these changes in the workplace, for instance, and address that as quickly as possible. So this set of challenges, again, cannot be addressed by governments alone. We need multi-stakeholder collaboration, academia, civil society, and the private sector coming to work together with the governments to address these risks. A last set of challenges or threats to democracy, the rule of law, and human rights comes from our inability to address the existing digital divides. In the morning, President Yoon said that digital divides could become democratic divides. I think it's essential to address this problem by reducing the gap, not just in terms of connectivity, meaningful, affordable connectivity to the internet and all the services that are there, including government services, but also to address the emerging data and AI divides. If we end up with a world in which we have managed to protect democracy against external threats, but we've not paid enough attention to what could be challenges within democracies, then we will not be able to sustain democracies into the future generations. So I'd like to thank you for your attention to my remarks today and invite all of you to join us as we get ready for the Summit of the Future by preparing an ambitious, a bold global digital compact with a comprehensive attention being given to these issues: AI, addressing the digital divide, upholding the multi-stakeholder governance of the internet, addressing human rights online, building up data protection and data empowerment, and most importantly, building digital cooperation, digital solidarity across the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gill, for your insightful remarks. Thank you very much. Next, we will invite Ms. Paula Galvez Caldirgos, a youth advocate and the founder of Adonia Lab, to the stage for her keynote presentation. Everyone, please join me in welcoming Ms. Paula Galvez Caldirgos.
Buenas tardes. Good afternoon, distinguished audience. What does it take to make society more inclusive? My interest in social impact began early, inspired in part by my grandfather, a judge in the Central Highlands of Peru, who often spoke about the societal disparities he witnessed. I went to law school believing it would equip me with the necessary tools to drive meaningful change, especially in a country with high levels of inequality, such as Peru, where I'm from. My first year lacked inspiration, though. Many courses seemed disconnected from real-life problems. But my perspective changed when I began an internship at Microsoft back in 2013, and I saw a demo video of Seeing AI Prototype. This project, which used artificial intelligence to help the visually impaired perceive the surroundings, opened my eyes to the profound potential of technology as a catalyst for social good. I was immediately fascinated by the idea of leveraging technology as a force for inclusion. From that moment, my focus shifted towards the intersection of law, policy, and technology. My commitment to transforming Peru into a more inclusive, innovative, and digital society started back then. I was on the path that led me here and hopefully beyond. After working for 8 years in the private sector, the Peruvian government invited me to assist with the digital transformation and the AI policy design process. Some people told me I would be frustrated and that the public sector bureaucracy would disappoint me. However, I found an opportunity to innovate and shed light on new ways to govern. As a firm believer in bottom-up participatory process, I created a multi-stakeholder committee. Here we're talking about AI at the global level, but I have witnessed firsthand an experience in a local level, bringing together civil society, academia, private sector, all together to find solutions to the challenges that AI poses. Protecting democracy and establishing safe guardrails for AI is a shared responsibility. Governments are not alone and must not be alone in this endeavor. Collaborating with a broad spectrum of stakeholders is vital to halt the erosion of democracy. I want to tell you about a stakeholder that I think is crucial in this pursuit, and that is youth civil society. Youth engagement is a critical area that we need to protect now. We see generative AI creating biased and fake synthetic content, large language models reinforcing polarization, and poorly designed AI-powered technologies that are not compatible with assistive technologies, leading to discrimination against youth with disabilities. However, I sincerely believe that artificial intelligence holds an immense promise when it is used wisely. For instance, AI systems break down language barriers and make resources more accessible to diverse youth populations, or the rapid synthesis and analysis of vast amounts of data. Sadly, AI has yet to live up to its full potential. I want to share with you what is my main concern about AI. AI is reproducing society's bias. It is deepening inequalities. I once heard someone say, that's just the way the world is. And that's true, people is biased. But it depends on us how we want to develop this technology. Data is the oxygen of AI, and transparency should be at its core. However, the data that is used to train artificial intelligence currently is not representative. It is up to us to shape the future of AI now. South Korea's perspective on the intersection between democracy and youth at this Summit for Democracy presents an immense opportunity for the global community to support the rising generation of democracy's defenders. My journey on ethical AI would not have started without good mentors and organizations that invested in me and enhanced my participation and engagement in digital governance. Despite my young age, I became an influential player in the development of tech policies, and each experience advocating for an open, democratic, and trustworthy digital transformation helped me expand my network and have access to several fellowships. Unfortunately, that's not the case for everyone. Youth communities are active at the forefront of global advocacy and democracy movements, from Hong Kong to Iran, Venezuela, and Peru. Youth are diverse and increasingly campaigning for action. However, seats for youth are limited. And when they are available, in most cases, it's a youth session or a youth board where youth talk to youth. While young people have the potential, we don't have yet the power. At this summit, we're trying a different formula, though, and I'm grateful for it. As the conversation we will have in the next 3 days between youth, government, civil society, and industry will enable us to move from resolutions to actions that safeguard and nurture human rights, democratic values, and the rule of law in this digital era. The health of democracy is affected by our choices around AI. When it comes to AI and to shaping its future, we can't just sit on the sidelines. Since 2013, I've been advocating for an inclusive digital transformation from the private and the public sector. But this year, I decided to take a bold step. I founded Idonia Lab, a nonprofit dedicated to designing and implementing the necessary conditions to make AI benefit all. I'm scared as a first-timer social entrepreneur, but I know that the time is now to start multiplying the efforts of those leveraging AI for democracy. Let's take, for example, Rappler, the Filipino independent news outlet founded by Nobel laureate Maria Ressa, which is experimenting with generative AI to enrich democratic consultations. Wouldn't it be great if technology could help citizens in polarized times have more productive engagement? Or the anti-corruption advocates from Armenia to Brazil who are working to use AI for government transparency. Think about how many more resources could be dedicated to democratic priorities if tech could help us reduce corruption. I'd like to end by asking you, who do you want to be in this journey to shape AI? Remember that out there, youth advocates are eager to make an impact, not just inherit technology. Reach out, start collaborating with us. This is my invitation to foster democracy for future generations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Paula Galvez Gallegos, for your passionate speech. Thank you very much. Lastly, we will hear from Mr. Brad Smith, the Vice Chair and President of Microsoft. He has sent us a video message, so I ask for your attention to the screen for the video message by Mr. Brad Smith.
Hello, everyone. I'm Brad Smith, the Vice Chair and President of Microsoft, and it's really my honor and pleasure to just spend a few minutes sharing a few thoughts with you all today. I first want to thank the government of the Republic of Korea for bringing everyone together, for hosting this Summit for Democracy, for building on what was started a few years ago. I think it's more critical for the future than ever. And as I travel the world, as I have the opportunity to visit a place like Seoul, as I did again last year, I'm constantly reminded that in many ways, there are few places in the world better than Seoul in the Republic of Korea to have the conversation you're having now. After all, it is a place that has given birth to so many technologies, back to the printing press and to digital technology today. It is a place that has literally evolved language itself in an innovative manner over a number of centuries. And it is a place that I think has a deep respect for timeless values that we all cherish. And I think that, in many ways, needs to be the theme for all of us in 2024. Between the time of this conversation and the end of the year, more than 60 nations will send their people to the polls with the opportunity to vote. And yet we're seeing technology, artificial intelligence, pose new challenges for the integrity of the electoral process. That's why recently at the Munich Security Conference, 20 tech companies, including Microsoft, came together to sign voluntarily a new tech accord to combat deceptive AI in elections. Fundamentally, it's about three things: protecting the authenticity of content, including content created by AI. Second, it's about detecting and identifying and removing from network platforms deceptive deep fakes, the kinds of AI-generated content that is now possible in audio and video form that fakes or alters the statements or actions of a political candidate. A new danger, if you will, to democracy. And third, it's about promoting and advancing public awareness and education. In Munich, the tech sector came together, but in Seoul and around the world, I hope we can all come together. We need multi-stakeholder action. We need government leaders and civil society leaders as well as business leaders to work together. And as we do, let's combat this problem while also keeping our eye on all of the good things AI can do to improve healthcare and productivity, advance environmental sustainability. It is a new tool to solve almost every problem that we need to think about. It will require that the leaders of today lean in to address these issues. And even more, it will require that the leaders of tomorrow, the next generation of people, dedicate their careers to making a difference, not just this year, but for years and decades ahead. That's why I think what you're doing in Seoul with this summit, bringing together people from around the world from multiple generations, is so important. We are the first generation on planet Earth to be dealing with machines that have the power to make decisions that previously were made only by humans. Let's ensure that we serve the future by coming together, addressing the problems that confront us, and making the most of this opportunity ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brad Smith of Microsoft, for that video message.